For it is written in the law of Moses, you shall not muzzle the ox while he is threshing.
Okay, the muzzled ox.
Yeah, now, most of us probably don't see oxen threshing grain every day, so let's maybe unpack what that actually involved. Threshing is just the ancient way of separating the good grain seeds from the stalks and the papery husks around them.
And the most common method back then was pretty simple but clever. Farmers would spread the grain stalks on a hard, flat surface, often a circular threshing floor.
Okay.
Then they'd lead a big, heavy animal, usually an ox, to just walk all over the grain. The ox's heavy hooves would rub off the chaff and husk, but the grain seeds were tough enough not to get crushed.
Huh. Ingenious.
Yeah. And to keep the ox moving efficiently, they'd often tie it to a pole in the center so it just walked in circles for hours. As it walked, they'd throw fresh grain in its path and sweep away the stuff that was already threshed.
Okay, I get the picture. And naturally, if an ox is working nonstop for hours, surrounded by food.
It's going to get hungry.
Right. So, to keep it energized and just be humane, the farmer would simply let the ox pause whenever it wanted, bend down, and munch on some of the grain it was working on. Simple, practical, compassionate.
But the sermon highlighted the temptation, right? For a greedy, maybe short-sighted farmer. They might value every single tiny grain so much that they'd actually put a muzzle on the ox to stop it from eating, hoping to save every last bit for themselves.
Oh, okay.
But what happens then? At some point, that poor ox, getting no fuel, gets too tired, too weak, and eventually it just stops working. The farmer's penny-wise, pound-foolish idea, trying to save a tiny bit of grain, actually backfires. He loses the much bigger valuable harvest by trying to hoard a tiny amount.
So God's command in the law specifically said, don't do that. Don't muzzle the threshing ox. But Paul asks this really deep question about that law in verse 10. He goes into its underlying meaning. God is not concerned about oxen, is he? Or is he speaking altogether for our sake? Yes, for our sake it was written, because the plowman ought to plow in hope, and the thresher to thresh in hope of sharing the crops.
Now, this is fascinating. Paul unpacks the deeper layer. He's not saying God doesn't care about animals, but that the law wasn't just for the ox's sake in isolation.
Okay.
It was given for human benefit, to teach a profound principle of justice, fairness, reciprocity. Letting the ox eat a little bit ensured it stayed strong, motivated, the work got done efficiently, and the people got a much bigger, essential harvest. It was ultimately for Israel's well-being, their food supply.
But there's more to it.
Way more. This law was intended by God to illustrate how all workers, and specifically those who labor in spiritual service, ministers, teachers, missionaries, should be supported. Like the ox, hard worker, especially one producing spiritual results, should work expecting to share in the results of that work.
Right.
The worker deserves to share in what they produce. It's their basic right.